Stories of Great Christians. From its radio studios in Chicago, the Moody Bible Institute greets its friends everywhere with Chapter 11 in the transcribed story of Florence Nightingale, The Lady with the Lamb. It was October 1854. London was alive with gossip. A Times correspondent had accused the War Department of gross neglect of the wounded soldiers of the Crimean War. Heroes died because no provision had been made for their care. An aroused public demanded that nurses be sent, and Sidney Herbert, Secretary at War, responded by appointing Florence Nightingale to supervise an expedition. But she had only 6 days in which to employ nurses and make all preparations for departure.
Activity was underway everywhere. Mr. Bracebridge kindly undertook to arrange passage for us and engage one of the fast new hansom cabs. It was frightening the way he speeded all over London at 10 miles an hour. In one room of our headquarters, women were furiously sewing up uniforms. And in another room, Mrs. Bracebridge was still interviewing applicants. Only one expressed a desire to go from a good motive. The rest were attracted because we offered twice wages paid in most London hospitals. There was but one thing to do. Go to Devonport Rest Home and beg Dr. Sellin, the director, to lend me some of his women.
Miss Nightingale, I got your message and I've been expecting you. Come in.
Oh, I've heard so much about your home, Dr. Sellin. I understand your nurses are reliable and experienced, and I've come to ask if you'd spare me a few of them for the Crimea.
I'm glad to do what I can, but how much that is, I don't know. I spoke to a number of the nurses last night, and I believe I might get you 6 or 8.
Oh, if only it can be 8. I promised Sidney Herbert of the War Department that I'd try to take 40 women, but it's proving quite a task to find that many who are willing to go.
I'll try to make it 8 then, Miss Nightingale. And I have a fine woman, a little more mature than the others, who can take full charge of our group, make all necessary reports to me.
I don't think I quite understand.
Well, you see, we of the direction here feel that our nurses should remain subject to us.
Well, I appreciate your viewpoint, Dr. Sellin. On the other hand, I'm sure that a little thought will help you to see the problem from another angle. The expedition is of necessity set up with only one supervisor.
And my women would have to be under your direct control?
Yes. Now, here in your establishment, you have only one superintendent, and that's how it must be in order to conduct affairs in an orderly manner, isn't it?
Yes.
There you see that it would be quite confusing to have a number of groups of women all working independently to accomplish the same task. The lack of unity would only lead to friction and a scattering of effort.
You're quite right. I hadn't looked at it that way before. Let me present the matter to my committee again.
Thank you, Dr. Sellin. Then, if the committee agrees, you think I can count on 8?
It's little enough for us to do for the cause, after all. I think of the mothers who have had to give their sons. Well, I'm a little ashamed. Yes, Miss Nightingale, I'm sure you can count on 8.
As soon as the news of my appointment reached my family, they hastily closed the house at Embley and came to London. There they caught up in the activities centering around my departure. Parthy was very helpful, receiving visitors all kinds at any hour and making endless explanations.
Goodbye, Lady Forster. I'm sure Flo will regret not having seen you. Parthy, I can't understand how she has the courage to take all of this at such short notice.
Well, she's strangely calm in spite of it all. I haven't seen her rushed or flustered once since she began work on this expedition.
Well, I must go if I don't get to see her again. Tell her I'm praying.
Oh, thank you, Lady Forster. I'll tell her. And I'll see that your check is put in her hands.
Just a little to help alleviate the suffering of our poor men. My carriage is waiting. Goodbye.
Goodbye. And thanks again.
Miss Parthy, the packages have just arrived from Embley.
Oh, good. We left half the things we should have brought in our hurry to get here.
Ma'am, I put the various boxes in your rooms, but this one...
What's in this odd little box?
There's a note on it, ma'am.
Deliver personally to Miss Parthy or Miss Florence. It's little Athena, Florence's pet owl, and she's quite dead.
Oh.
It's all my fault. I forgot and left Athena locked in the attic.
Did someone bring a message from Mr. Bracebridge?
Yes, Flo. They said to tell you that passage has been arranged on the Vectis for 40 nurses, the Bracebridges, and yourself.
Oh, good. Glad it's settled. But I'm afraid there won't be 40 nurses.
Oh, why do you say that?
Well, I visited I don't know how many institutions, sent begging letters to all the hospitals, and publicized the expedition everywhere I went. But only 38 have signed up.
Sidney Herbert will have to be satisfied with that. After all, when you've done your utmost, he can't expect anything more.
What's in the little box?
Oh, Flo. The first casualty. And it's my fault.
Why, it's Athena. Dead. Poor little beastie. It's odd how I loved you.
Oh, Flo, you're crying. The first tear I've seen you shed in all these hectic days.
It was arranged that we should go overland by train to Marseilles and sail from there. But before leaving, I once again visited Dr. Smith, an official of the War Department, and he and Sidney Herbert assured me...
No, Miss Nightingale, it won't be necessary to take supplies.
That's right. By now, the supplies that were sent out should have arrived. They're on hand now, I'm sure. So don't bother your head with those things.
Indeed, nursing is quite enough for you to occupy yourself with.
Then you think the Times reports are not true, Mr. Herbert?
Well, let me say this. They're greatly exaggerated.
Yes, they'll go to any lengths to get people to buy their bally papers.
Well, I haven't had time to get anything together, but a hospital to be properly attended has to have sheets, mattresses, blankets, the right kind of food.
Those are the things that were sent, Miss Nightingale.
In this talk of there being no dressings for the wounds...
Oh, poppycock. Just do your bit to comfort the men. That's all we ask. Ladies have finer instincts and do see things men don't notice.
We'll certainly do our best to comfort the wounded.
That's the idea. You can't go wrong giving a nice, soothing drink to a soldier if it looks like he's in misery.
We left London October 21st and reached Boulogne at dinner time. The French were enthusiastically cordial. Fisher wives shouldered our baggage and carried it to the hotel where we ate. We were cheered in Paris, where we spent one night. In Marseilles, I had arranged a stop for 4 days for reasons that I presently made clear to Sir Lionel Bracebridge.
Now, Flo, you must sit down and eat.
But what about that table of nurses? They haven't eaten yet.
It seems a shame that you should have to do so much waiting on them.
But none of them speaks French. How are they going to manage?
It would have all worked out wonderfully if the ladies had consented to sit one at each table.
But the ladies had to sit in another room. They won't associate with the common nurses at all. Don't tell me you haven't noticed.
What I've noticed is that you're wearing yourself out making up for their lack of courtesy.
I scarcely feel tired at all.
You don't look tired either. On the contrary, you look very handsome and composed. Everyone's so impressed.
We'll see how impressive I am when I start bargaining with the French shopkeepers.
Are you going shopping?
Yes. Sidney and Dr. Smith told me there ought to be a great profusion of supplies at Scutari by now. But frankly, I have my doubts. I want to take some things just in case.
What sort of things are you planning to buy?
Sheets, cloth for bandages, cloth for mattress covers, arrowroot, jelly.
Do you have money for all that?
A little of my own. But many people gave me contributions when I left, and I want to invest them to the best advantage.
Well, I don't understand all the ins and outs, but I do trust your judgment, Flo. If you think supplies are necessary, they must be necessary.
With my supplies safely stowed in the hold, I could breathe more easily as the Vectis pushed away from land with all our party aboard. A great crowd of French gathered on the shore and shouted friendly farewells. An English boat was anchored in the bay, and from this we heard a rousing cheer go up as our ship passed. We had one day's smooth sailing, and then, on the second day out, we ran into a gale. Oh, the wind's come up.
It's getting awfully rough.
Too bad I'm a wretched sailor.
The Vectis isn't much of a ship anyway. My husband says he heard at breakfast that the government has a hard time manning her. She has a reputation for being a bad boat.
Oh, but it's getting rough.
I think part of the pitching and tossing is because of the way she's made. I think the government could find something better to carry the mails in.
Oh, Selina, I feel...
I say, you're beginning to look terrible.
I'm sorry to bother you, but... Will you help me below? I'm going to be frightfully sick. And I was sick all the rest of the voyage. As I lay in my bunk, I could imagine what my nurses up on deck were talking about.
Well, at least these uniforms are warm.
Oh, I should say, a big help on a cold trip like this.
Poor Miss Nightingale's been sick every day since we sailed. What a pity.
So good she was to us, too. I've never been treated so good and waited on by a lady in all my life.
Me neither. I come along for the pay, I'll tell you straight. But now that I'm in it, I feel like I ought to do some good.
Only thing I got to say is this. I wish they'd give me a different dress. This one's too tight.
Oh, there's none of them fits. They was all made in a great rush, and you got whatever came off the machine as you happened by.
They sure watches us close, too. When we was off the ship at Malta, did you notice how they treated us?
You mean putting the religious women in front and behind so we couldn't get in no trouble? Well, sure, I noticed.
I wonder if they're going to be that strict like that when we get off at Scutari.
Well, from what I've seen of Miss Nightingale, I'd say they was going to be every bit as strict or stricter. She's nice and quiet, that lady. But the little bit I've seen of her, I'd say she can be hard as steel, too.
The rain stopped just before we got to Scutari, and all of us went on deck for our first look at the land of our destination.
Miss Nightingale, look off there. See the shore?
I see it. It's all sort of gold and gleaming through the mist.
Kind of pretty, isn't it?
That's the hospital. That huge square.
And that's where we're to work. How big it is.
Oh, big enough to give us plenty of work. Have you heard about the battle that was fought yesterday at Balaclava?
No.
That means they'll be bringing in the fresh wounded soon.
Oh, Miss Nightingale, when we land, don't let there be any red tape delays. Let's get straight to nursing the poor fellows.
If things are like I suspect we'll find them, some other duties may come first. And I rather think the strongest will be wanted at the wash tubs.
And so we conclude Chapter 11 in the transcribed story of Florence Nightingale, The Lady with the Lamb. This is another in the series of Stories of Great Christians, which come to you from the radio studios of the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago.